recording,
Okay.
and
Can I do the intro?
it's going, so go for it.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome to what did we end up calling this? Cafe Influencer Cafe. Got it.
Perfect.
First try. Easy. Anyways, we're doing a pilot episode. This is pilot number 2. Excited to be here. Okay,
There we
I've
go.
always wanted to do that. Sorry.
No, you're good. Thank you, Alejandro.
Okay.
Yeah, today I'm here with Alejandro Suntay, automotive driver online and on the physical road. He's out there driving a car. Alejandro, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
There you go. So we're here to talk about content creation, here to talk about influencers, here to talk about people who are doing some pretty cool stuff in the industry. So Alejandro, I've done some looking into your background, bit of a cheeky influencer background check, if you will, and I found a bunch of different things, including multiple Apex Legends tournaments, Rainbow Six Siege stuff, some Overwatch. I believe I found some Call of Duty and Street Fighter Dota 2 content, as well as Professional Guitar Hero 2, John the Fisherman, full combo on expert guitar behind the head, if that is correct.
That's 100%.
Okay.
All right. Expert
100%
mode
full combo.
behind the
of
head.
course.
Yeah.
Naturally, star power at the right times.
Oh, you know it. You know it.
Got
Hit
it
that
nailed.
whammy bar.
Right,
Yep.
of course. Got to get the extra points. So when did you realize you were so competitive? What drove that desire to be so competitive and enter competitions?
So I would say it all started. Okay, so weird take, but it all started because I grew up super fucking poor. Pardon my French. And so I never had video game consoles available to me. So every time I wanted to play video games, it was like at my friend's house or like at my cousin's house or whatever. And so automatically I'm starting like 100 yards back, right? I don't play games every day, don't have consoles, whatever. And so my friends, obviously being kids, we all competed, because couch co-op, couch multiplayer, et cetera, et cetera. And so I always had to be better than I could already be, I guess, if that makes
Right.
sense. And so primarily, that kind of morphed into when I got my first PC, and these were the days of pre-Steam Counter-Strike. So we were all playing Counter-Strike and 1.5 mostly.
Nice.
And once I was enabled to have my own PC, that competitive nature still stayed, and I just wanted to be the best. I always wanted to be the best, and anything that I did, whether it be school, whether it be games, whether it be doing chores, I was always pushing myself farther and farther. And I realize now that I'm addicted to that kind of self-improvement, right? That day by day, constantly, striving to be better than you were the day before, and that really showed. I would also say it came through an addiction to being on the global leaderboards, seeing yourself on in the top 25 or the top 100 or whatever, and then trying to make it to that top 1 spot, even if it's only for a minute. That really kind of drove my competitive nature. Once money got involved, right, with esports becoming more mainstream, competitions becoming more accessible and available and more frequent, then it just kind of became a thing. Like kids want to be professional NBA superstars. They want to be NFL superstars. For me, it was never about that. It was about, I want to be a professional esports player, individual, competitor, if you will. And that's what sort of drove that. Now, what I'm doing now is completely different from that, but also same. So to answer your question,
Sure. No, that's awesome. I love that. So it sounds like you've always just had a drive to push the top of the leaderboards, to make waves, and whatever you do, you put your heart, soul, and mind into it, right? You make sure that everything is being met, not just met, but exceeded expectations. Does that sound about right?
I think if you look at it this way, growing up in a traditionally Asian household, most people say, "Oh, my parents' expectations were unreasonable." My expectations were always the unreasonable ones. Uh, really being hard on yourself, but also being constructive, and while you're being critical, I think is important. I think
Right.
The biggest thing about that, I would say, is like when you're given the opportunity to really push yourself and really excel, that's when you'll kind of figure out who you are as a person. And I like that person. And so I constantly push myself to be better.
For sure. No, I like that. So we mentioned that you've done a lot of different things with a lot of different competitive scenes. How'd you get into streaming in the first place?
Ooh, this is a fun one.
Yeah.
So, there was a website way back in the day, called My Anime List. Um, aside, I'm a total uncloseted weeb, proud of it.
There you go.
Um, and I had a bunch of friends that I'd met online there, and we used to hang out in Skype calls. Actually, I believe it was on MSN Messenger, and
Nice.
then it moved to Skype. But once Skype had the ability to screen share, or essentially you could use a webcam to film your own screen, we used to do if you're familiar with M3, sorry, it would be Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of
MST3K.
there we
Yeah.
go.
Had to think about it.
Yeah, same. But yeah, so just imagine that, but a bunch of weebs in the early 2000s watching anime. And that was kind of like my first like experience streaming to an audience. Uh, in tandem with that, there was a program called Xfire. This was pre-Steam days, and Xfire had the ability to share your gameplay with your friends.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how I got my start in streaming. And then, with the advent of Justin TV and Own TV, allowing you to stream to the masses, so to speak, that's when I started the, standardized streaming of today.
Yeah. No, I love that. How was the jump from Xfire to Justin to Twitch? How did that all go? Was that? I reckon it
Oh,
wasn't
horrible.
seamless. Yeah.
No, not at all.
Cool.
Absolutely horrible. And there's very mean people on the internet that say very mean
Oh,
things
yeah.
about you, and they don't even know you. And it's absurd.
Yeah.
But I will say this: that environment, I think, shaped who I am today.
Oh,
I
sure.
think that a lot of people kind of recoil from negativity online and kind of shut down. For me, that was kind of like, it's like, okay, so I'm sure you can at least empathize with this, but you have a teacher, right? And they notice that you're not really like doing all that you can do, or whatever. They, their expectations are really high, and they say, oh, you could do better, right? Then contrary to that, you have a teacher that doesn't believe in you at all and says, no, there's no way you can do this.
Yeah.
And so some people take that to heart and they say, oh, there's no way I can do this, right? Some people, like myself, take that kind of critique or criticism and say, oh, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. Hold my beer, right? Like,
Yeah.
watch this, right? So I was of the latter sort, right? And so those sort of early experiences with the trolling and, heavily targeted trolling, hate speech,
Oh, yeah.
racism, stuff like that, that made me just want to be better, I guess. And because of that, I'm, 13 years later, still doing it, right? And I would like to say that I've, done pretty well so far, but, sky's the limit here. This is we talked about this in passing conversation recently, but I think that streaming is really the new frontier of media and content creation. Sort of the way that TV was when radio was the standard, right? It was just the
Oh, yeah.
Wild West. And you could do whatever you wanted. You can be as creative as you wanted or not, right? Just chatting is one of the most popular and most viewed categories. Same with vlogging, which by all intents and purposes is more of a free form structure. And that's a really new thing in content creation too. Previously to, I would say the 2010s, content was heavily scripted. Was very rarely was it kind of off the cuff ad lib style. So I mean, obviously Monty Python, a lot of it was ad lib, right? You can go there, but I'm saying
yeah.
like in terms of like media that's put on screen, generally it had more of a format, right?
Sure. No, yeah, there were notable examples of some films having a lot of ad lib potential. I think Ghostbusters was like that.
Right, yeah.
But
Bill
absolutely,
Murray.
a great movie. But yeah, I don't know. I totally get that. No, I think that is a fair take on content creation. Definitely heading the way of ad lib and of I suppose even the reality TV sort of situation of things moving
Right.
towards caring more about the people involved and their lives and their things rather than whatever the product is. But to shift gears,
Mhm.
cheeky shift gears. Recently, you've been rebuilding your Shadow Realm brand, your Discord server, and other such things around automotive content creation. What
Right.
drove you to automotive content creation? What drove you to cars?
That's an interesting one. I mean, I would say it has roots in being, a first generation Asian American male. I think we saw what the more successful members of the community could do. And we were like, okay, I want to be like that, right? Same as like the rap game or like whatever. Always been interested in cars. Never quite figured out how to combine that with live streaming. Live streaming has
Mm,
always been my focus. Content creation was kind of like secondary to that in a lot of ways, being social media, YouTube, more standard formats of that. And never could figure out how to do both at the same time until I discovered simulation. Uh,
mm,
with simulation, it opened a lot of doors, allowed me to do things that I could only dream of doing due to cost prohibitiveness. So, for example, let's talk drifting for a sec, right? My IRL in real life drift car build, if I wasn't doing all the work and had like people, helping me, as well as parts being provided by other people that, believe in what I'm doing, it'd probably be north of, 15, 20K right now,
oh yeah.
just to kind of get to where I am now. But because of, the kindness of other people and sponsors and, generous sponsorships and stuff like that, um, my IRL drift car build, I think we're at like 7,000 or something.
It's awesome.
So very cost prohibitive. Simulation opens that door, uh, that previously was not even able to be forced open, because now you can prove yourself online and have real world, uh, kind of meaning.
Yeah.
So if you're really fast on simulation, there's like the Logitech G Challenge, where they'll put you on a real race team, right? Stuff
That's
like
sick.
that exists. Feel free to fact check. That's probably, a very TLDR version of what actually happens. But yeah, and there's a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of online racing leagues where you can really get that sense of competition through racing on simulation.
Hmm.
Uh, so I guess to bring it back to your question, um, getting into cars was like a natural progression. Figuring out how to integrate it into my live streaming content or content creation, that only happened really recently.
Hmm.
Sorry, did that answer your question?
No, that's great. That's perfect. I
Okay.
love that.
Okay.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. I know. I know when we met initially, you were just getting into the
Right.
automotive scene.
Yeah.
You were in
Yeah.
between a few things. You're like, I don't know. We'll see. And then you just really hit it hard. And when
Yeah.
you hit it hard, you brought up the idea of. I mean, I saw it throughout. It wasn't in the initial thing we talked about, but you brought up the notion of the 365 days of drift challenge. What is that challenge? Did you come up with that challenge? How has that challenge kind of changed the way you interact with automotive content? Can you walk me through that process?
So I've always been a really all or nothing kind of guy. Uh, when it comes to any sort of endeavor that I take, I put 110%. I think it shows. And one of the ways that I like to measure forward progress is through challenges.
Hmm.
Uh, through doing things like the 365 days of drift challenge, where I drift every day on simulation. Well, this was the original plan: drift every day on simulation, go out and buy or build a drift car, and then go drift it in real life and see if those skills translate. And the point of that was to prove that simulation is a very, very easy stepping stone to get into real life motorsports. Because if you think about it this way, right? You total your car in real life, you got to go build a new car. You
Yeah,
total your car in the simulator, you press the reset button, and now you're driving again. So,
sure, sure.
yeah. So, so the 365 days of drift challenge was just a way for me to really push myself into, um, kind of like learning in a easy to digest story format and having people be able to follow my adventure, because you can immediately see, oh, you're on day 113 or whatever, like
Hmm.
what is your progress since day 60, what is your progress since day 0, right? And how to kind of judge that forward momentum in and once again, in an easy to digest format. And we've definitely talked about formats before.
Oh yeah.
uh One of the I know everybody makes fun of me for this, but one of the driving kind of like storyboard style formats for this whole project is that idea of like the hero's journey or the
Hmm.
hero's quest, or I like to say shonen anime. You have somebody with zero skills, you come into a huge challenge. So, for example, 365 days of drift challenge, and you ace it, right?
Yeah.
And you just during that time, there's setbacks, and sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back. That's just kind of the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes you can really push through and discover your potential as a person because you're faced with these challenges, right? It makes it easier to digest as well.
No, absolutely. I like that. It has been a hot minute since I have watched any anime in any meaningful way. The most contemporary thing I watched was Death Note, and that was over 10 years ago, so here we are. But I can already, it kind of, I don't know, it reminds me of when I learned that Naruto actually made it to what he wanted to in Boruto. I was like, whoa, he
Yeah,
did it.
became the
That little
Hokage.
dude who
Yeah,
says, believe it, he made it.
yeah,
Good
yeah.
for him. So I totally get that. I totally see the sentiment and the notion of that inspiration, of someone who you think there's no way, and then they stick the landing. You go, wow,
Yeah.
I love that. No, I think
That's
that's. Mhm.
that. I mean, that's what you got to do. Like, look at it this way, Ferg. Like, when, for example, with this podcast, right? Like, if you just made some outrageous claim, like, I want to become the #1 podcaster, like, just based on that comment, people will listen to your podcast. Like, oh, there's no way this guy's gonna become the #1 podcast, whatever, right? Like, you're next Joe Rogan. Like,
I hope not.
it's well, that's what I'm
I
saying,
know.
right? Like,
I know.
you make some outrageous comment, and people will just be like,
This
oh,
dude.
I want to see what you can do. And then if even if you miss the mark and your shit just fucking sucks, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
somebody came to watch, and
Yeah.
maybe they'll be emotionally invested enough in your story or what you have to say, to follow along, right? To invite
Yeah.
them to join.
No, absolutely. No, I love that. That's a great philosophy for it. I'd love to speak about the drift car that you
Yeah,
have been working on. I took a look at, I think, one of the videos you posted. It is
sure.
correct me if I'm wrong, a BMW E36 328i, which sounds like my favorite NVIDIA graphics card. But out of curiosity, like it also labeled as the red turd, which for those at home, if
Yeah,
you have a
yeah,
red
yeah.
turd, go to your general practitioner. But why'd you pick that car?
Okay, so small correction. It
Okay.
actually technically is a 318 Ti. It's a
Okay.
97.
Oh,
So it
okay.
is a hatchback, which uh was clearly the worst car BMW produced in that era of BMWs.
Sure.
But it has the engine from a 328, so it's the 328 Ti red turd.
TI. Oh, there you go.
Uh,
It's even more
yeah,
NVIDIA.
yeah, very, very, very. Well, Nvidia's green, so I
Oh,
mean,
excuse me. My apologies.
right, yeah. Intel's blue, Nvidia's green,
Right.
AMD's red,
They're red. Yeah.
ATI is no longer any color.
Rip.
Uh, but yeah. So okay. So what do you want to know? What do you want to know?
Oh yeah. No. Why'd you pick that car? And yeah. What's the vibe with it?
Um. Well, let me preface this by saying I wanted a drift car that I actually cared nothing about, so I wasn't scared
Sure.
of totaling it.
Yeah.
The working theory on that is if you care too much about your car, you're gonna be scared to push it to the limit.
Sure.
So if I had like a car that had more sentimental value or more physical, like monetary value, um, be a lot more scared. Uh, because I care very, very little about the outcome or rather the duration of life that this vehicle has remaining, I'm able to drive it and really push my limits on the track. Um, Particularly with BMWs, and I could get into a whole conversation on it, but E36s are probably the currently most affordable drift car that is also relatively easy to work on, uh, because it fulfills the front engine, rear wheel drive, and manual. Those are the first three prerequisites.
Mm-hmm.
The second three prerequisites are cheap. There's a lot of them, and nobody gives a shit about them.
Yeah.
So those six prereqs were met with this vehicle, and it just so happened that a friend of a friend who is a friend of Chelsea Denofa, um, kind of had one of these kicking around. It got abandoned as a project, so we were able to get it for very cheap because it did not run,
It's awesome.
and it came with a bunch of extra parts. Yeah, so it just ended up working out. like I said, not my favorite car. I don't even really like the way it looks, but it's my car, and
Yeah.
so I love it because it's my car. I hate it because it looks stupid and breaks all the time. But
Sure.
hey, that's a drift car, right?
Yeah.
They're not expected to be roadworthy because you're not driving on the street.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's
like as
fair.
long as they're track worthy and passes tech and is safe,
Yeah.
quote unquote, then you're good to go.
No, I love that. Yeah, I can say after looking at the car, I mean, I something about that like late '90s, early 2000s. It's like this, like a box on wheels sort of thing that I don't know. I kind
Yeah,
of love it. I always
you
think
vibe
back
it.
to,
You vibe with
I
it.
reminds me of the like any of the like the like Toyota Camrys from like '98, the car that will never fail you.
Sure.
I just love that aesthetic. I think they
Yeah.
look pretty rad. Um,
No, okay, don't get
yeah.
me wrong. I don't love the car in the sense of like the aesthetic
Oh, sure.
value of the car, but I think E36s are definitely the best looking BMWs.
Mhm.
I love how boxy and angular they are. Uh, but somebody once showed me a picture, and we could put this up
Mhm.
on screen in post. But the BMW sedans and the BMW coupes, so including the M3s, look really really good. Like just incredible looking cars.
Oh yeah.
They're timeless, really. You can, nobody really realizes that they're 30-year-old cars. But the hatchback was an ugly duckling.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I'm at. Looks
Oh,
good from the front, looks good from the side, kinda. Looks not so good from the back, but
sure. You do what you can.
yeah, yeah,
Take a
yeah.
photo on the best angle, right?
Right, right,
But
right.
no,
MySpace angle.
perfect, perfect. No, I love that. That's wonderful. When it comes to, I watched the YouTube video where you discussing fixing it. What does it require? Stuff like that. I really enjoyed that video and had a wonderful
Thank you.
YouTube poop quality about it that I hadn't
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
in
yeah.
quite a hot minute. Very deep fried, strong callbacks. Can you speak to me about like that style of editing? What inspired that editing? Why is that the vibe? I'm into it. I'm just curious. Like,
Sure.
what's the taste of it? Yeah.
So one of the things that is interesting about our team specifically is we're a little bit older. A lot of us in our late 20s, early 30s, and that's the kind of content we grew up on,
Yeah.
right? YouTube poops. I mean GI Joe PSAs. Just really out of left field type YouTube content. When YouTube was still young, right? Filthy Frank,
Oh, God.
stuff like that, right? And one of the things that we sought to do was make our content how we wanted to make it.
Mhm.
Shadow Realm, my company, has a very very talented creative director, and him and I and a couple other staff members constantly just go through strategies to make our videos as close to what we want to do as possible, but still make them marketable, right? And this is going to get a little bit more into streamer
Mhm.
advice corner, but the reason why I changed my name to Alejandro Suntay about I want to say like 7 or 8 years ago, before everybody started using their real names, is because I think that it's impossible to make content that is not natural for you to make, right? So Car Future is fun, right? I get it. I love acting. I love people just being over the top, but it's hard to replicate day in and day out, right?
Right.
My journey and my stories have always focused on things that I wanted to do. Therefore, it was natural for me to be myself. And I think that being yourself, although very cliche, is most of the time the best thing you can do. So the same thing goes for your content. Make content that only you can make, right? There's a certain brand of content out there. There's a certain style or certain, structure or story or whatever that only you can tell. You just got to
Right.
figure out what it is.
Okay.
And so, in turn with our YouTube content, the deep fried memes, the not so funny dad jokes, the slightly educational but also entertaining and, general shit postery of our content is, that's who I am. What you see is what you get,
Mhm.
kind of thing. And it's not that it's our production value is pretty high in some places, but uh I think the primary focus is on trying to tell a story,
Right.
right? And do it in a format that we like. That's easy to do, right? I guess that's
Totally.
the really thing. Really really apparent thing when it comes to that sort of content.
Oh, sure. No, I love that. Yeah, I mean, you can always spend more money on anything, but if you don't know how to use it, don't know what you're doing, you've just spent money on paperweights,
Right.
So, No, I love that. I think that's phenomenal.
We primarily use the iPhone for filming, if that
Perfect.
makes you, yeah.
No, that all you need, honestly, is a phone, and you can do so much today. It's kind of scary how much you can
Yeah.
do on your phone. Um, but I love that. I think that's phenomenal. When it comes to you're doing simulation stuff mostly right now.
Yeah.
You're working on the sim. Is it Assetto Corsa? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
Is it
correct.
okay? Sick. What's with the sim rig? I know you recently are now an ambassador for the Advanced Sim Rig or Sim Racing Company, which is super exciting. I'd love to hear about the sim rig you've got going on, how you got in contact with those guys, and that entire process.
Sure. So I originally contacted advancedsimracing.com with intent to purchase a sim rig.
Sure.
Through my research, though I didn't really know anything at the time, I identified them as a company that seemed, to have ethics and morals first.
Yeah.
Secondly, to have a very good product. Whenever I purchase from a company as an influencer, I always look at the company first as, is this a company I would like to work with?
Hmm.
Right? Because I will purchase something to get in the door and then seek sponsorship after if my numbers don't line up, or just come, right out the gate, being like, hey, will you guys sponsor me, whatever. um in this situation, after talking with them for about a month to determine what exactly I wanted in terms of equipment, uh and timeline wise, I was already like streaming and stuff with the simulation stuff.
Right.
um I was like, essentially was just like, hey, I really like the products you guys have. Help me figure out the other things I need, and I will purchase from you. After about a month or two of looking at stuff, um, I just one day I sent them an email. I was like, hey, take a gamble. I'm gonna become the face of drifting. Sponsor me, make me an ambassador. Um, and they said yeah. So that's kind of how that all came together. And generally, I would say for those of you that are newer content creators or maybe experienced content creators seeking sponsorship, the easiest way to get a good sponsorship, I'm not talking about just an affiliate code or like some kind of like discount link or like
Right.
whatever, is actually like talk to the company and see if they're a company that wants to work with you and you want to work with them. There's got to be balance, right? So one of the pain points with ASR is they didn't have a lot of social media representation, especially not in the more informal side.
Hmm.
They had no representation on Twitch, which was another pain point that I thought I could fill,
Yeah.
and they had no real kind of exposure to the YouTube market. They only had Instagram, uh,
Interesting.
and so I do have Instagram. I'm almost at 23. I think I'm like 23,000 followers or something. Obviously on Twitch, I've been a partner for 6 years, and I pretty much outlined my entire business plan of the 365 days of drift challenge, the year of drift challenge. Um, and was like, hey, like this is what I'm doing. Would you guys like to be a part of this? And then I hit him with other ideas that we can't really talk about yet, but you'll see what's cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so that's how that came together. They shipped me out the rig, helped remote put it together.
That's awesome.
Um, over we would use like FaceTime or whatever, and yeah, assembled everything, and I've been driving on it for about 3 months now, and couldn't be happier. So, if I may,
Yeah.
big shout outs to advancedsimracing.com for being a primary sponsor, and also thank you for making me an ambassador. You guys rule.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's huge. I love that. No,
Thank you.
I've seen the photos of the rig, and it's so cool. The D-Box tech is absolutely wild. Can you talk me through like the rig? Like what do you got going
Sure.
on in there? What does it all do? Things like that.
So the original concept of this whole project was to see if simulation translated to real life,
Right.
right? Therefore, we want to create the most realistic simulation experience possible. So, with the rig, we tried to use the highest quality parts that were the most similar to what you would find in a vehicle, because at this time we didn't know what vehicle we wanted to find,
Right.
and make it able to be adjusted. Um, the second layer of that is adding the D-Box full motion system. So with the D-Box, it works very similar to your car's actual suspension. So your car has four wheels. Attached to those four wheels generally is some sort of suspension device, whether it be a strut and spring or a leaf spring or whatever. There's suspension, four corners. And so the D-Box imitates that almost exactly, reads the telemetry data from Assetto or whatever game you're playing, or sorry, simulator. simulation software. Um, yeah, will read that and then translate to the D box. So your whole like cockpit is kind of moving around. Uh, and I can provide some video for you if you want to
Yeah,
show everybody.
that's awesome.
And so because of that movement, you're able to better replicate real life and better simulate that. So your hours, like let's say you spend 10 hours and at 90% realism, that's, minus 1 hour. So you 9 hours of real driving time, quote unquote, right? Uh, the higher that percentage goes, the more meaningful your simulation experience is if you seek to drive in real life, right? So having it be in the 90s is pretty good.
Yeah. Uh,
I've, yeah. So the last part of this is I've had a lot of friends that drift in real life come try out the rig, such as Mr. Seven, aka Dizzy Cat, um, and he's right there, 95%, says it's really good. So
that's
I
awesome.
think that answers your question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of got off topic.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's awesome. I know my favorite reference for any kind of success or anything is you're looking for like a anywhere between 90 and 98% accuracy. So 95 is looking pretty good. I love that. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Such a sick setup.
Thank you.
And in terms of this is more for my own amusement and actual interest though. How's the cable management? How does that all
Horrible.
work? Awesome.
Terrible. It's absolutely. I will send you pictures of it later, but
Excellent.
I kind of have everything either like taped or oh, my puppy's here. I have
Yeah.
everything like taped or just kind of hanging.
Sure.
The one thing I will say about live production is there's a lot of things that kind of just get pushed to the side due to priority.
Oh yeah.
If the cables aren't actively inside the D-box units or being torn up by the D-box units, then it's not a problem. In terms of aesthetics, it's I like to say it's lane core,
Okay.
a little cyberpunk,
Okay.
right? Just got
There
a
you
lot of wires, a lot of screens, a lot of
Perfect.
it's horrible. So,
Whatever gets you to the finish
whatever
line,
works,
if you
man.
will.
Right. I mean, that's the thing about live production, though. Really, like if
Yeah.
you want to talk about how live production is different from normal produced content, it's kind of like you do what you got to do to get the product out, and it may
Yep.
not be perfect, but it's the best you can do at the time, and that's what really counts. Is you make the deadlines happen, you make the live production. The show must go on,
Oh
as
yeah.
they say in theater, right? So,
Oh yeah.
hmm
You gotta mask whatever you can, put the best facade forward, and what's happening behind the curtain doesn't matter because they can't see it.
right, yeah,
I love that. Very cool. Thanks, man. When it
appreciate it.
comes to the content and stuff you host on your Twitch channel, your
Sure.
Discord server, I know you've been doing a variety of monthly competitions, longer
Yeah.
form stuff, kind of more sporadic stuff. Um, how how do you set those up? Like, what's the process from like picking the map, the cars, dates and times, and people participating? How does that entire process work?
Right. So the whole idea, I guess, that we founded the competition aspect or the community events or any of the sort of public events, if you will, that
Sure.
that we do at Shadow Realm is our goal at Shadow Realm is to bridge the gap between simulation and motorsports. So anything that we can do to bring more people into into the simulation space, right? And empower them through knowledge or experience or connections or whatever to get out into the real life motorsports space, or if they're just happy on saying simulation, we're fine with that too.
Right.
But we're trying to push people towards being able to accomplish the things they want to accomplish that previous to simulation would have no chance of accomplishing, right? So with our events, they're geared primarily towards newer people or less experienced people that are looking to seek and gain experience,
Okay.
right? And to connect those people with other like-minded individuals to form a community. So that is the basis of our events. With the weekly drift tournaments or the monthly drift tournaments, um, same policy, right? Keeping it
Right.
uh, kind of geared towards beginners and intermediates that want to gain that experience in a serious competition format. And then by having no monetary prizes, like we still have prizing, but with no monetary prizes, we can kind of uh, focus the competition towards those newer drivers, right? Because like you sign up, you don't pay anything, and you don't lose anything if you lose, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a very low impact, but it still has the framework of a very serious official competition with lots of eyes on it. We're the highest viewership on those Saturdays when we do those comps, as well as those Fridays when we do the mini comps in the category.
Right.
So there's the pressure, right? There's also the kind of like format, right? It's very official. We have judges, we have staff that volunteers. Your matches are official. It's in its own channel, da 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 da, whatever, right? And I'm commentating the entire time during the event. So that's kind of like the format of those. And what we hope to really achieve is to raise a new generation of simulation drivers
Yeah.
that are more focused in building simulation as a whole rather than just like one aspect, like professional simulation drivers that only do drift competitions or semi-professional grip drivers that only do competitions on simulation. We want to create an entire community of people that just love motorsports, whether it be simulation or real life, and love competition and want to make that whole scene grow. Because viability check, the only way that we're able to do this and to continue doing this is if new people join, the community, the existing community.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Dude, that's sick. I love that. Yeah, it's good to
Thanks, man.
give people the ability to, try something out that can intrinsically feel high stakes, but give them a fun avenue to explore it in a way that makes them, feel good. Feels good to take a part in something, even if you don't win, but you still are part of something bigger, right?
Right.
I think that's awesome. I think that's really, really cool. In terms of these final series of things, I'd like to shift the focus over to like dreams, hopes, things that are coming for the future. Just straight up, what is your dream drift car, and how does it differ, or what is your dream cruising car if you have a differential?
Ooh. Okay. Dream drift car. Wow, that's a hard one. I'm a big fan of what's called an S chassis, which is so Nissan makes the S13, well technically the S12, the S13, the S14, and the S15. Those are the model names. Generally they fall under the 240 SX nomenclature.
Okay.
I would say my dream like street car or whatever would be a 90s style S13. My dream drift car, however, would probably be an S15.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Which is the later model, newer version of the S13. So I like S14s too, but they're just S chassis are quite cost prohibitive at this time.
Right.
You can get a really clapped out one for like 10 grand, and it's not nice. So you're probably gonna put another 20 grand into it
sure.
if you want to make it a nice streetable car. I mean, maybe less, but let's assume that let's assume that you as an individual don't have the capabilities to work on your own vehicle, and you have to pay somebody to do it, right? So
yeah.
I like S chassis. I would say second option, JZX 100, which is a Toyota. It looks like a big Camry. So imagine like a Lexus LS 430 looking kind of thing. That's a JZX 100, and they are very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think the American version was called the Cressida, but they didn't make them after a certain year. So they're like big 4-door saloons, very comfortable, very luxurious, also very quick. So very cool.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I know. I cannot begin to describe how tangential I am to anything drifting related. Played my fair share of Forza Horizon. That's not even remotely the same, but fun game. Not simulator, fun game.
Fun game.
I will say I was always partial to Mitsubishi Lancer Evolutions. Any of those?
Ooh.
Those are really fun.
Wait, okay, so Ferg, right back at you.
Yeah.
Since we're kind of like, over on this side now.
Yeah.
What is your dream vehicle? I'm not gonna say car, but dream vehicle.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mystery Machine. No. I would say it's a good. Hey, big fan of the van. But no, I would say
big fan of the van too.
Big fan of the van.
Van life, dude.
But if in terms of like hypercar or anything like that, naturally McLaren P1, They're just
Okay.
gorgeous. The nice orange, just they're so rich.
Ferg is a very cultured individual. I see.
But another one, this is a meme car, but I'm
Okay.
unironically might take it over a McLaren, and I don't say that
Oh,
lightly, is a
okay.
Peel P50 because they're so funny and they've got no reverse gear and it's got a
Yeah.
handle and it's just a
Yeah.
GameCube on wheels and I
I
love it.
mean, you're not wrong.
I love it.
Interesting choice. See, I would have figured you for the type that was like, oh yeah, I want like a, like a Delica, which is like a, kind of like exploring van. Kind
Yeah,
of thing.
absolutely not.
That's what I would have pegged you as. But okay, P1, solid choice.
Yeah.
Second choice, a little bit did not anticipate, but
I like
definitely
things that
should
make
pop a
me
picture
laugh.
up on the screen there.
The Peel P50 makes me laugh. I love it. It's such an interesting vehicle. A lot of cool history on that one.
Yeah, we could one day. Let's do an automotive podcast about weird
I'm
vehicles.
so down. I love that stuff.
Yeah, dude.
Oh my god. But in terms of other such things, I know you're working on the simulator. You're working on things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
When do you see yourself participating in physical drift tournaments in like a professional capacity? You see yourself moving that direction sooner than later?
Absolutely.
When do you think you're gonna start to get there? I know it's impossible to tell timeline wise, but do you have a notion, a goal, any kind of thing like that?
I think if you shoot high and miss, you still end up higher than you were originally.
Yeah.
So, the original plan was to drift in real life after 365 streams has been completed, right? So there's the kind of behind the scenes magic.
Yeah.
365 streams at 4 days a week, puts you about 1.75 years. I think if the math is right.
That's about right. Yeah.
So kind of bought us a little extra time to figure it out, obviously to figure out costs and whatnot. Now I have, we're on day 112, so about almost 7 months, 113, I don't know, somewhere around there. We have our drift car built and pretty much ready to go. We, spoiler, but recently experienced some delays, setbacks. So we're hoping to hit our first drift event on November 27th.
Awesome.
In fact, I'm fairly confident that we will be able to do that.
That'd be sick.
November 27th of 2022 for reference if you're watching this in the future, if this pilot ever gets released. And so with that being said, I feel like next year would be a solid guesstimate as to when we can compete, as the season is beginning to shut down, as we're approaching the winter months. There will be additional opportunities to compete next year. And once we get a tow rig up and running and a trailer, we will be able to go cross country and hit as many events as possible. The goal being achieve our pro license. So we will be allowed to drive in professional events or pro-ams, as well as grassroots events. And then kind of how it works. So I'll give you a quick breakdown. So you go from grassroots open events, anybody can drive them, to pro-am events where you get to kind of compete on friendly grounds against professional drivers. Then you get your pro license, right? After you get your pro license, there's a couple more little distinctions between what type of pro license you have. And then you can join the top dog in America, right? Just America, which is called Formula Drift. So you'll be like an FD pro at that point. So you kind of just work up the list, and the goal is FD, and that's what we're shooting for. And we'll see if the winds of chance kind of don't blow too hard.
Yeah.
So.
No, I love that. I think that's really cool. That's super. I mean, it's super nice that there's a conceivable pipeline. It's nothing super esoteric in that regard. There's a clear stepping stone to get to the goal.
With everything I say, just throw it in the shonen anime kind of like framework, and you'll kind of figure out what we're up to.
I love that. That's super cool. All right, man. Thank you for showing up, talking about what you're out there doing content-wise, where you've been, where you're going. One final question is, where can people find you, follow you, and contact you if they want to reach out? Where you located? So
our official hub is on the net, on the World Wide Web. You can find us at shadowrealm.gg. That website contains links to all of my socials, the Discord for Shadow Realm, as well as the Twitch stream. But specifically, you can find me primarily on Twitch, live 4 days a week, starting 1:30 p.m. PST. and that's twitch.tv/Alejandro Suntay. All of my social medias and YouTube concurrently are also at Alejandro Suntay, and that's ALEJAN as in November, D as in Delta, ROSUN as in November, T as in Tango, AY, Alejandro Suntay.